Good evening. Welcome to QUT Web News. Firefighters in Canberra have battled for more than 8 hours to bring a massive chemical blaze under control. The factory fire erupted at midnight, sending flames hundreds of metres into the air and releasing thick clouds of potentially toxic smoke.
Loud blasts shook houses in the northern Canberra suburb of Mitchell.
There were some massive explosions and I didn't go outside. I just thought it was the military testing something.
The burning factory housed an energy company which produces oil for electrical transformers. That prompted fears of toxic chemicals being released into the skies. Residents within a 10-kilometre radius were told to stay in their homes. 2 hours after midnight, more explosions. Black acrid smoke was visible from kilometres away in the heart of the nation's capital. It took teams of firefighters more than 11 hours to bring the fire under control. The ACT Fire Brigade have tested the burning material for the dangerous chemical phosgene, but they say the risk to residents is low. However, the fire is still sending thick smoke over the city. Police have cordoned off a 300-metre boundary around the factory. Schools were closed for the day. Parents were told to keep their children at home while the chemical fire burned. Melanie, QUT News.
Queensland's new Deputy Premier Andrew Fraser was sworn in today, just a day after celebrating his 35th birthday. And there's change afoot in Canberra too, with Prime Minister Julia Gillard announcing major reforms within the Labor Party.
At the announcement of his promotion, Andrew Fraser swiftly moved into election campaign mode.
In the end, this is the team we're taking to the election campaign when it's due in 2012. Today still, the other mob can't tell you who's going to be the leader, let alone the deputy leader.
Mr Fraser was elected unanimously this morning by the Labor caucus after his predecessor, Paul Lucas, stepped down yesterday. Mr Lucas denies opposition claims that he is jumping ship, fearing an election slaughter for Labor in March next year.
We've had 7 members retire this term. We've got 51 on the caucus. That's quite a normal turnover of members, and it is important that we have turnover, we have renewal.
The state government is not alone in shaking things up. Prime Minister Julia Gillard is also planning major changes. She wants a US-style election process for the selection of federal candidates.
So I'll move that we increase our local connections to Labor supporters by trialling community pre-selections or primaries in some seats.
QUT political science professor Clive Bean says the proposed reforms may be difficult to implement, but they would make the party more democratic.
I think there is a good chance that it would work quite well, but it would need to be trialled and monitored, and it's a matter of how it would fit with the culture of the Labor Party.
Both the Prime Minister and the Queensland Premier hope the changes can help the party regain ground on both a state and national level. Ground that has been slipping away in recent opinion polls. Ben Crock, QUT News.
A Brisbane man claims he was so intimidated by the tactics of a door-to-door sales team from an energy company, he had to flee his own home. The Energy Ombudsman says hundreds of complaints about aggressive retailers are lodged each year. The industry is now under pressure to introduce a voluntary code of conduct.
They worm their way inside sort of business. I didn't say, would you like to come in? I just opened the door and they were in.
Bert Krause lives in Burpengary on Brisbane's north side. He says he doesn't remember which company the marketers were from.
We gave the notice that discussion was finished and they still wouldn't go. So
Mr Krause says he had to get his neighbour Heather to come and ask the salespeople to leave.
They kept saying I should sign their form and it'd save me money.
A representative for the Minister for Energy says there have been more than 600 complaints to the Ombudsman in the past year. We approached several energy providers to get their point of view. All declined to comment. The new ACCC Code of Conduct would see marketers issued with individual accreditation to track complaints and improve the way they are trained. But Ian Jarrett of the Consumers Association has doubts the scheme, which is to start on January the 1st, will work. He says the United Kingdom implemented something similar but was regarded as a failure. He says there's only one rule that's effective.
Never, never, never buy anything when a door-to-door seller comes to you.
Sarah Richards, QUT News.
With the summer storm season almost upon us, householders are being urged to clean up around their properties. Free dump sites have been set up as an incentive to clear backyards of rubbish, which could become dangerous in wild weather.
The Brisbane City Council has set up this free green waste dump to encourage the Brisbane residents to prepare the family, the home and the yard for the wild weather ahead. Chairman of Field Services, David McLaughlin, has this advice.
We're asking residents to look around the garden, pick up anything that could be blown around in the storm, look at the trees, trim the trees, take them to the transfer stations and they can dispose of them this weekend for free.
Last year, Brisbane residents took advantage of the free green waste disposal offer, dumping an extra 400 trailer loads a day. Last year's storm season was one of the worst Queensland has faced. And with January's devastating flood still vivid in their minds, residents will be looking to decrease potential risks as much as possible. The outlook for this season, though, is slightly more promising.
The Bureau advice indicates that while we are unlikely to see disasters as widespread as we did last year, we are nevertheless at an above average risk.
There'll be 3 separate weekends in September and October, the first starting tomorrow when residents can dispose of green waste. Danielle DePinto, QUT News.
David Jones has opened its first Queensland in-store breast screening clinic. The Brisbane store is David Jones's third to offer free breast cancer screening. It's expected 4,000 women will take advantage of the facility each year.
Anything we can do to have more women getting breast screens more regularly is something that we should be cheering about.
The clinic will open next Monday.
Brisbane scientists have developed a new food source set to improve the livelihoods of 60 million people living in poverty in Southeast Asia. A new fast-growing prawn developed here at the Queensland University of Technology has already been introduced to the Mekong River, which runs through 6 countries.
Researchers at QUT have been hard at work developing a super prawn. They say it grows 25% faster than the average giant prawn and can weigh up to 1 kilogram. Researchers say the bigger size equals better taste.
They're very white meat and they lend themselves really well to Asian-style cooking.
The biogeosciences leader at the university says 60 million people in Southeast Asia rely on freshwater animals as their main source of income and food. It's estimated the industry is worth nearly $1 billion a year. 3 giant freshwater prawns from Vietnam and Thailand were combined in one breeding group to create the super crustacean.
So it's just a simple approach of selective breeding. Just as we produce, varieties of tomato, varieties of cattle, the next generation of change in aquaculture is going to be applying genetic selection.
3 PhD students are currently examining how to further improve the newly developed gene. They think reproduction might be the key.
I'm just looking into their genotypes, which means their genetic materials.
It's hope one day the prawns will make it to Aussie shelves.
We think that potentially it would be a really good species for Northern Australia and perhaps also a way of providing livelihoods for Aboriginal communities.
It may be some time before we see the super prawn in Australian stores, but the prawn market in Southeast Asia definitely won't be so shrimpy anymore. Jane Chon, QUT News.
The Broncos have had their last training session ahead of their sudden death clash with the Dragons this weekend. Coach Anthony Griffin says they're prepared and aren't underestimating the battle they face.
Warming up on their stomping ground at Red Hill today, the Broncos looked calm and ready, their focus ironing out mistakes from previous games. Many say the Broncos have it in the bag. Griffin doesn't want the team to slacken.
There's no guarantees with what's going to happen. They've prepared well and we've been up for everything up to this point and we've earned the right to be here, so we'll find out tomorrow night how we handle that pressure.
The Broncos have won 8 games straight at Suncorp, but will take on the Dragons lineup, led by the Broncos' own former coach Wayne Bennett. Bennett hasn't led a team to victory at Suncorp, but Griffin isn't taking any chances.
They're the premiers and they got the master coach and they got their backs against the wall. They're going to have their best game of football tomorrow night.
Speaking on behalf of the Dragons, Ben Hornby was keeping strategies for the match a secret. He's confident Bennett's coaching will get them over the line.
It's pretty relaxed. He just wants us to go out there and play our best footy, and that's what we've got to do. If we play our best footy, we're going to be hard to beat.
The Dragons want to see retiring great Mark Gasnier into the grand final. The Broncos hope to do the same for Lockyer.
Tomorrow night's game will be Lockyer's last at Suncorp Stadium. The question remains, though, as to whether it will be the Broncos' last game for this season.
We want to obviously make it Lockie's last game, so it's we want to win the game, so we're going out there obviously with our own motivation.
Rebecca Oakley, QUT News.
Time now for a look at the weather. It was a sunny day with temperatures hitting the high 20s down the Queensland coastline and the low 30s further inland. From our special time-lapse sky cam, we can see it was a beautiful day with just a few scattered clouds in the early afternoon. Around the nation tomorrow, and fronts are bringing cooler westerly winds and showers to southern Victoria, Tasmania and southwest Western Australia. A dominant belt of high pressure is keeping the remainder of the country clear, directing warm northerly winds through the interior and south. In Queensland, a few isolated showers are forecast for the northeast tropical coast, mostly sunny and warm elsewhere. That brings you up to date with the weather.
And that's all the news we have for now, and indeed for this week.
We'll be back on Monday with more QUT news. Goodbye.
Goodbye.